Hi, I'm Gil Whiteley. I was one of the two Roy Romer appointees to the Baseball Commission, the late Sam Simplizio. Mr. Governor, as we used to refer to him, because at every room we ever walked in, he was running for governor. That was Sam, right?
Right.
You know, and Sam has passed away. They named the field over on the other side of the mountain range on the western slope, where they hold the Junior College World Series after Sam Simplizio Field. And I was the other appointment by Roy Romer. So when I was doing a radio show, in my restaurant, Maxfield's, and I'm not plugging Maxfield's, it's been closed for 20 years. I got a call in the middle of the show, and my hostess came over, and we're doing a show in my dining room, and I was doing it with Woody Page, and my hostess came over and said, "Gil, you have a phone call." She's mouthing that to me. I said, "I'm a little busy." You know, I just did that. And she says, "It's the governor." And I said, "Oh," and I'm live on the air and go, "Oh, I have a phone call from the governor." And I said, "Did my reprieve come through?" I swear, I said just like that. And Woody heard that and said, "Maybe I ought to take that call." And Woody continued with the show, and I went over and they said, "Can you be over here at 2 o'clock at the governor's office?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, I'll be there." And I had met the Illinois governor several times because I was from Chicago and, you know, the Chicago area. Roy Romer, I didn't know at all at that time. I certainly know him better now, or knew him, but I haven't talked to him in years. He went on to become the director of L.A. Public Schools.
Superintendent, right?
Superintendent, which my sister Mary won the Golden Apple Award one year. 75,000 teachers. Every year there's one Golden Apple. She got the Golden Apple that was awarded to her by Romer.
Wow. Small
Years later, yeah. I mean, so I was very proud of her. She passed away last year. So I get to the governor's office, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to a restaurant, Maxfield's here in town. I do sports talk radio." He says, Why did I get all these resumes coming to you from Tony La Russa, from Jim Leland?" At that point was the Pittsburgh. He was never come to town here yet. He was the Pittsburgh Pirate manager at the time. Ron Schuler was general manager of the White Sox. Roland Heeman, who has been general manager at several stores, really great baseball guys. I sent them my resume, said, "Son to Romer, I want to be on the baseball commission." See, that got his attention.
Wow.
Or else he would have never known who I was. He says, "Why do you want to be the baseball commissioner?" I said, "Governor, because I'm afraid you politicians are going to screw this thing up." I swear to God, you know me well enough that I did exactly that. And he said, "Well, I'll get back to you." Then like 2 days later, he got back to me because it was announced in the Post and the news, and I didn't know. It was an article in the paper, and it was on the, you know, whatever. And that's how that all began. I never even had a resume before then. Of course, I've always worked for myself. I had my own construction company. I built my own restaurants. So the only job I ever had was being in the Marines. 66 and 69, Red Shirt Friday. Wear red shirt to honor our troops.
There you go. So how did you find, what kind of a role did you play then on the baseball committee?
I had no idea. I went in there and I'm saying, "Well, what do I do?" And I'm thinking, I'm going to be a baseball commissioner. Everybody's going to love me. I'm bringing baseball to town. Then people explain, "Yeah, you're on the pro side of a tax. Everybody's not going to love you." I was trying to get a tax here to this thing. And then everything changed. It was the most work I'd done on any project. I'd done a lot of charity work, and I'm doing a lot more right now, but I stopped all my charity work. I worked for March of Dimes. I worked for cystic fibrosis for the Denver Ear Institute. And I put a lot of that in the back burner for the work I was going to do with that. We were completely unfunded, as you guys know, because you stupidly wrote that into the legislation. Because it wouldn't have gotten passed if you'd said, oh yeah, we need X amount of dollars. So there's a certain amount of people that we can thank for the donations that came in to make the work that we did possible. Coors gave us, I believe, $100,000. Bill Daniels gave us, and both of them said, don't tell anybody. They were looking for nothing at that point. And so we got to be friends with, and worked with Peter Coors at the time, and Bill Daniels, who I'd known just a little bit because Woody was good friends with him, and so I'd been to Shangri-La for parties and stuff like that, and met him just socially, in different times. And when I went to that first meeting, I was really young. We were all certainly much younger. I thought I was older. I always thought I was younger than everybody, but certainly not Kathy Williams. And I remember the very first meeting. We're in this hotel conference room, not too dissimilar from where we're at right now. And I'm pouring a coffee at the coffee thing. I pour coffee, and the lid was loose, and the coffee just went all over on the table, went on the bagels and everything else that was there. And I was like, oh, great, nice start. So I met a lot of people that I had no idea who they were that day. Prior to the very first meeting, after the announcements of that I was a commissioner, and they were announcing commissioners of the 6 county areas. Each county had 2 representatives. The governor had 2, and however it was split up. Prior to that, I had meetings with people call me, and I didn't realize everybody had their own agenda. It's an agenda thing. You guys, you were working with John DeQ. I'm looking at. Don't. Yeah. You were working with John DeQ. I'm looking. Who owned the Zephyrs at the time. He was the parking lot magnate back then in downtown Denver, and had a reasonable anticipation of being the owner of the baseball team here. I knew John DeQ, not well, but I knew him well enough that he used to come at my restaurant and talk to John and all the things that went with that. I had meetings with several people, and I think you were one of them, that called me up and met me at the restaurant and said, well, here's what we're trying to do, and explained the whole thing to me, which I didn't know a lot about other than I wanted baseball here. I'm a baseball guy. I ran, I started the Zephyrs fan club. I sponsored it. We had meetings at Maxfield and did that, and we had buttons made, and I still have my Zephyr fan club Gil Whiteley button, and made lots of friends through baseball, and went to a lot of Zephyr games. Duffy Dyer was one of the managers. He hung out over at the restaurant with me, and a lot of the players came in that were there back then. I was a major league guy. Grew up in Chicago and Los Angeles. I was at, I went to the, and going to Chicago, we were more White Sox fan than Cubs, but I was a Cubs fan too. I didn't see any. I was the only guy in my family we lived north side, Evanston, Illinois. I was the only person in our family that liked both the Sox and the Cubs. My dad was an American League guy, grew up in the Boston area, Providence. My mom's from Worcester, Mass. And so he was an American League guy, so we did a lot of American League. And when we moved to LA, I was at the very first game in the old Wrigley Field where they had the old home run derby that they showed on TV. Now, people don't remember the Angels played the first 2 years they played. They played in the old Wrigley Field, which is from a lot of the 40s movies. That's where the minor league team, the Angels, played, and the LA Stars played there. And movies like The Kid from Left Field, the guy with It Happens Every Spring, Ray Milland, those were all shot at Wrigley Field. I was at the very first Angels game back in 1961, I believe. I saw Roger Maris hit 2 of his 61 home runs at Wrigley Field. We always went to see the Yankees. My dad liked the Yankees. And so baseball was part of me growing up. I was a really good athlete. I was never very good at baseball, which made me more of a fan of baseball than the other sports because I thought I could play those. You know, I wasn't good enough to be good at baseball. I mean, softball, I was always the guy, but baseball, I think it was the curveball. Get out of the way. But always a baseball guy, and I'm a baseball historian. And I really felt that our town needed baseball. One of the reasons, this was the Broncos town then, it is still today. But one of the things baseball teaches sports fans is, and I don't want to say this incorrectly, how to lose. Bronco fans still haven't learned how to lose, and that's okay. But the best baseball team in the world loses 60 games a year. Well, Broncos don't do that in a decade, forget that. And so baseball turned this into a world-class town. When I think our first motto, which I was in support of, was I think it was Colorado is Major League, and we put that on the hats that we ended up getting, because that was the case. That's the way we felt, and we had to convince baseball that that's the case, and so that's what we were doing.
So you invited the baseball commission to meet at your restaurant.
Oh, with several, yeah. I mean, we had no money, so I mean, many times we held fundraisers or press conferences, and I picked up the tab to all of that. I never billed anybody for any of that, but being at the restaurant, it was easy for me to do, and I was glad to do it.
Right, and that wasn't that far from where Coors ended up being.
And I had guys like Norm Clark that, said I had a conflict of interest because I owned a business downtown. Well, I think pretty much everybody had some business interest downtown that was involved with the commission. Norm Clark wrote one of the great things in his book, High Hard Ones was the name of his book.
Yes,
He had like
yes. He said
4
some
pages dedicated to me.
Very interesting things about me too.
And he had a portion in there where he talked about the fact that I was choking him to death. And Sam Simplicio saved his life because Norm Clark was in our way. He wanted to play like he was covering baseball, but he was a deterrent. He was trying to find every little backside that would go on. We had made an agreement amongst all of us to not talk about what we were trying to accomplish, because we didn't need to give the opposition, which there was a great opposition, any fuel. Woody Page, my best friend still to this day, drove him crazy. I wouldn't tell him anything about what was going on. I was on the radio every day. And then, so it was an interesting time, to say the least. And I thought I was going to be everybody's hero, but you were like the enemy. You're pro-tax. Hey, a penny on $10. Shut the hell up.
So before the election, you talked about baseball out on your radio program.
They forbid me for that. Going to 6 weeks prior to the election, I was off the air. Because it was a political thing, and they said, oh, well, politically we can't, or they'd have to give time to the opposition. So 6 weeks after going into the election, they pulled me off the air.
So what station was that, Gil?
That was on K-Big Radio, 1090 AM, KYBG. I was doing the midday show there with Woody Page every day.
Well, we were in a recession back then, which it should have, it was probably you as a business person were very aware of.
Yes.
The recession. And so I know that you helped the commission raise money. We had the Stadium Authority, which was supposed to be finding the site and educating the public, and then we had the commission, which was trying to entice.
The much maligned Colorado Baseball Commission.
Which was trying to raise money and entice voters to vote for the issue. Can you talk about some of the things that you did that helped the commission raise money?
Well, maybe the biggest cash thing I was involved in there was Gary Antonoff and I both knew Bill Clymore, who owned Imperial Headwear, which was a worldwide headwear service, golf caps, baseball caps, all that. Not so much even baseball caps, mainly golf caps, all over the world, country clubs, that kind of thing. And and Bill and Gary, who's a guy who's done a lot of work, did a lot of work to get the IA put through, all the things that went on there, and we put him on later in the process. He wasn't one of the original commissioners. We voted to put some commissioners on that thought it could help us politically and then raise money. So Gary and I went over to see Bill Clymore to get some caps made. I had another business that gave me early caps that gave me like a gross of caps, and I'm trying to think of the name of that business. But so the real early caps, we got a gross or 2 gross of those. I have some of those too. Want to buy one? But we went and see Bill Clymore, and Gary and I were sitting in his, in the secretary's area, and Clymore's a good guy. He eventually sold that and opened up a couple other clothing businesses, shirts and whatever. And Gary said, "What should we get? We should get ask him for 2 gross of hats." I said, "No, we're going to ask for 5,000 hats." He said, "What?" He says, "He's not going to give us 5,000 hats. Are you crazy?" I said, "He won't do it. He won't do it if he won't do it if we don't ask." And so we went in there, and Bill was like, "Yeah, okay, you're putting the touch on me." This, and I said, "I'm glad to help, whatever I can do." And that's when he, whatever I can do line got me, put me in. That was me. "Hey, your switch just went off." Whatever I can do. Well, here's what you can do. So we have a speakers bureau, and we have events and fundraisers, and not necessarily fundraisers. We had a lot of awareness events, and our speakers bureau, we had 2 or 3 or 4 of us that would go out and speak to American Legion, Kiwanis, Volunteers of America. Would do that at 6 in the morning, and at different hotels along I-25 motels, and they had a meetings room. They'd meet there, and they were all in the 6-county area, and all of them wanted to talk to us and what's going on, and at the time, I hate to even say this, I think at the time, I was blowing smoke up their dress, up their skirt, or whatever you want to call it, saying, "Oh, this is going to be economic development in a downtown area," and we had all this platitudes that we were putting out there, and at the time, I honestly believed, I'm probably overstating what's happening here, and in retrospect, it was much more than what we told them. It was much bigger. Initially, we thought it was going to take 13, 14, 15 years to pay off the baseball stadium with the 1 penny on $10. It got paid off in 8 years. 8 years. Yep. And the majority of that was people who came and spent money on hotels and all the things. They lived in Bohoken, Nebraska, and they came in weekends, spent series, and much different dollars than Broncos. People came in and went out the next day. People came in for series, all the things, and spent money in the restaurants, the hotels, all the things. We way undershot the importance of that. But we did that, and we sold the hats. We were strict about it. Even if you wanted a hat, or I wanted a hat, I paid $20 for it. That was the deal. We gave no hats away. And we sold 5,000 hats, and we raised $100,000 toward the money that we needed to raise awareness for baseball in the area. Jim Turner and I went to McDonald's at their meeting. They had a meeting in the Denver area for the region. It was Wyoming was involved in it. Out of the 6-county area was involved in it. But even the McDonald's owners, and Don Budell, I think, owned 11 McDonald's in Denver area. And he was all for what we were doing, big Cup fans, which I was a Cup fan. He's from Chicago. He said, and he went in, I said, "Here's what we need to do. We want to get we would like to get a McDonald's to give us some in-kind with their advertising, with their marketing time on the radio, and we need a month before the election." And along with our political consultants,
Rick Ryder.
Yeah, Rick Ryder, who's a terrific guy, smart guy. All those guys on that, and Ryder and Associates, they were a big help in all the things. That was one of the other early meetings I had before I was ever at a meeting. Ryder called one with me and brought his people in and sold me on them. I mean, I'm sure he was doing that to everybody. Smart guy. Hedging his bets. And I had no idea of all the back channels that were going on. Yeah, hey, I don't want the politicians to screw it up, and I certainly didn't want to be one of the people screwing it up.
So talking about the in-kind from McDonald's, when you look at
They gave their entire advertising budget, I think for almost 6 weeks or at least a month, where they were like, hey, baseball in Denver, sign up for McDonald's if you like baseball, you want to win some seats to the World Series, which they supplied. They supplied the airfare, they supplied the hotels, they supplied everything. We didn't have any money. And Ryder put it together. He says, here's what we're doing. We're going to ask them questions. Do you like apple pie? Do you like baseball? Hey, would you like to go to the World Series? Would you like to go to a baseball game here in Denver? Never did they say, hey, you want to vote to tax yourself?
vote yes
Never.
on the tax.
So all the questions were like an easy yes. So people were used to saying yes for baseball. They were used to saying yes. I'm like, God, this guy's much smarter than me.
Well, it's pretty amazing.
And Rick Ryder, if you're still around, you'll probably see this.
When you see how many millions of dollars now are spent on issues-based advertising on television and what was able to be accomplished by the commission with very little or no money.
Well, the commission's still much maligned. No one's going to hold a dinner for us, trust me on that. And that was a lot of the reasons in the early meetings we said, no one's going to take any individual credit here. We're not going to go out there and go, I did this, we did that. We just never did that. I mean, we kept everything to ourselves. We didn't want to build an enemy. We did everything quiet. That was the job. I'm like, okay, I'm in, I'll go with that. So we built a groundswell. The basis for the original Rockies season ticket list came out of what we got the sign-ups from McDonald's for that World Series thing that was there. My great thanks to McDonald's, and the turnout for this election was so big. Maybe my only real problem with this whole thing, is the way it turned out, is that the only county that didn't vote for baseball was Denver.
No, Denver voted, Adams County didn't.
That was your county, and you lost the next election?
Yes.
Kathy Williams, ladies and gentlemen. I thought Denver didn't vote for it.
No,
it was really close,
very
but
close.
they barely passed it.
But they got all the money. I mean, which is fine. I mean, all the economic development is unbelievable. The housing, the multifamily housing, all the things that have gone here. It is. I mean, I am telling you right now. I talked to all these people at these meetings. I said, "Oh, the economic growth downtown will be this," and I'm thinking, I'm overstating it. And we didn't even get close to our estimations. It was so much bigger than we ever imagined.
Well, because there had been
Shall there be more?
so much controversy over the location of the Denver Convention Center site, that we had decided that the Stadium Authority would need to narrow down the site to 3 sites before the election, that the electorate had the right to know, generally speaking, where the stadium was going to be, but we didn't want to do just one site because there's always somebody that has a problem with the site.
Well, Norm Clark thought it was going to be kitty corner to my restaurant. That I had that kind of power to get that account. Gills are going to do that. I'm like, what are you, crazy?
Talking about
Norm's still a friend of mine today.
Yeah.
I just joked him for a little while.
Talking about Norm Clark and Woody Page, who ran some negative articles.
They were cool. Well, Norm wasn't cool on it. He really wanted it to happen, but he's the guy that digs under everything. That's his nature. And Woody was cool to the commission through a lot of it. He was very pro-baseball. He just didn't like the fact that would not comment on it, and we kept things to ourselves. He didn't understand that we were better off creating our own underground movement of pro followers without getting a lot of stuff going and get in the paper that says, hey, we're coming up, they're going to vote to tax us. we kept away from that. And so yeah, Woody and I had, and Woody was very pro baseball. He didn't like the tactics that we had accepted, and I had to deal with it. And he just drove him crazy. I was his best friend. I never told him anything. I really just didn't.
Well,
Woody's not that guy.
One of the early polls that was done had indicated that the issue would not pass.
Oh.
I know that one of the
I was
things
hated.
that Woody...
Never mind you guys. You
Woody's-
wrote the damn thing.
One of the things that Woody said to me is this isn't going to pass, this is ill-conceived, and you're going to ruin our chances of ever getting
Yeah. How'd that work out for you, Woody?
So
I'm serious. No.
what kind of other negative things, since you were on the Speakers Bureau, I'm sure you got lots of questions.
Yeah, I'm hard to look at and take me on. I project a little bigger than I'm not a small man. I'm not a big man, but when you deal with me in real life, you don't
You
approach
tread
me.
lightly.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm as nice a guy as you ever met. So I was very.
You say so yourself. Yeah.
We would
I've said
challenge
some
that.
stuff about Neil over the years, there's no doubt in my mind. I was always good to you. But I'm very good. I'm hard to argue with. I do talk radio for a living. I don't lose arguments. I just don't. I mean, I know how to get people on my side, and I was a very good person to have as part of the Speakers Bureau. I'm hard, and one of the things that I've never been a sales guy, but I'm very hard to say no to, and that's a good trait, and it's one of the things that people who I love and people who I respect. One of the things that is part of the way I've earned my life is I never say no to anybody I respect or love. I can't always say yes, but I never say no, and I work with that.
So what do you think Major League Baseball has done for Colorado overall?
Well, take a look at the building out here. I mean, it's crazy what's actually been accomplished, what's done here. I still think the best general manager they ever had was Bob Gebhardt. He had all the visions. I love Jerry McMorris. I'm the Monforts who woke up on third base and thought they had a triple. I'm not big fans of Charlie and the appropriately named Dick. We built too nice a stadium for the owners because people come here in the summer and they go, oh, I got to take you to Coors Field. It's not necessarily, hey, I got to take you to a Rockies game. This year, things are great, but we went through a lot of years. People were going to Coors Field because of what we conceived, what we did. It was us that said to the baseball commission, hey, we don't want walls around that area. We don't want walls as you walk around. We want that thing cantilevered and spent a lot of money with that cantilever. That was before the stadium authority even happened. Okay, we had gone and saw the worst stadium ever built in Comiskey Park. It was the last worst stadium ever built. We took that trip to go do that, which was a fundraiser. It was $2,000 a person to go doing that. We went to worst seats I ever sat in Wrigley Field. Up in the upper deck of the height of the. I'm like, what is a VIP trip? $2,000 a person, and here we are in the upper deck. But we looked at all of that. We used some the things that were suggested to us by people. The fact, and a lot of people don't realize that Mile High Stadium, every seat faces straight out. If you're in the 50-yard line, it faces straight out. If you're in the corner, it faces straight out. But every seat in Coors Field is tilted, and we got that from Camden Yards, and we said we need to do that. So every seat at Coors Field is for the best possible viewing. And every seat, if you're going down the third baseline, it tilts a little bit more towards home place in the pitcher's mound. People don't realize it's something they don't notice. It's a lot cheaper to have a line of seats, a straight rebar in the back of them, and see it home. So you're sitting here and the home plate's over there, but no, you're facing this way as you do. And one of my suggestions early on, because I had sat right behind home plate at the Mile High Stadium for all those Zephyr games over the years, and they had like just John DeCue seats were down there and all that, and they had little cup holders at about 40 seats. Said we should put cup holders at every seat. Every stadium that's ever built does that. And I'm not sure they didn't use my suggestion, but that was one of the suggestions we put into when we turned stuff over to the baseball commission. Said, hey, yeah, cup holders would be a good idea. Well, you're welcome.
So what do you think of how baseball is evolving today, and Coors Field took out some seats to have a party deck?
Well, shame on them. When I say shame on them, we designed the stadium to just come around and turn around. Hey, we're 60,000 seats at Mile High Stadium. Oh, let's take more money. And the Rockies put money into that right field bleachers that no one ever sat in. For a couple of years, they sold those seats. Terrible seats. If you sat in any of those seats, you sat in the second level, you couldn't see the center fielder, you couldn't see the right fielder, because it wasn't part of the stadium design. They added it later. They would have had the cantilever or the angles of the seat would have had been like this, that have railings at every row. So they added a bunch of seats that weren't part of what the Rockies owners, the Rockies management actually paid for, but they were useless. They weren't part of the original design. And it was open. It was supposed to be open and look into the outfield. You could look into the Rocky Mountains, or you could see Long's Peak and all the stuff that went with there. And they cut into that. Then 20 years later, they say, hey, let's make a party deck. Great. And people love it. People love the party deck, but, you know, the only reason they had to do it, or they would have ever done it, is because they made the mistake on the right field bleachers.
So if the governor...
Try to be candid here. I want to be a little candid.
Yeah. So if the governor called you today and asked you to do this all over again, would you?
Oh, absolutely. This is the most work I ever put in on any project. But yeah, absolutely. And you guys were there. There were people that did things and people who didn't. We've all served on committees and whatever else. And I met some great people on the commission. I met some that were okay people, and a lot of guys have come and gone and passed away. Stadiums and buildings and courthouses named after the people on this commission, all the different people who were there. They're hopefully not forgotten. I remember the people that actually did a lot of the work that was involved in it, because it was an incredible amount of work. And I don't think the baseball commission, and we've never asked for it. No one's ever gone out of their way and said, you know, you did something. You did something here. It was probably, I was in the Marine Corps from 1966 to 69. When I got out of the service then, in the middle, did a Vietnam War, servicemen and former servicemen were not all that popular. In the last 10 years, it all started in the groundswell. People go, hey, thank you for your service. That didn't happen back then. So over time, there maybe somewhere down the line they'll go, hey, thanks for being a baseball commissioner. Maybe another 50 years go by, maybe someone will thank the baseball commission for the work they did. And I can't really go without saying, you know, John DeCue, none of this really happens without John. He ended up, and the baseball commission, everybody was afraid of John DeCue. They said, who's going to tell John he's not going to be the owner? Do you remember any of that? You know who did that? That was me. And I had breakfast with him in a restaurant. I said, John, we're not going to support you. We need to find a better owner. And he was like shocked at that meeting. I had breakfast with him in his own restaurant in Cherry, not too far from here, over here at Village Inn or something he had. And I love John, and it was good that I did it, because I'm good enough to be very forthright and frank and not insult him through it. I don't think he was very happy with me, But it wasn't my decision, it was a decision we made that needed to happen. But then the ownership package, the first owners, the drugstore cowboys that ended up in there, and everybody was falsifying their was it, who was the guy?
Monas?
Well, there was Monas and Antonucci, but there was a guy that was he wanted to put like $10 million in cash in his, if you did any background check on him, he was like he was in a witness protection program up to like 2 years earlier, and he wanted to put $10 million. And that was DeBartolo money. And they told him, yeah, no, you're not involved in this.
Right.
Because DeBartolo wanted at that point to be an owner in Major League Baseball. So a lot of weird things that happened. A lot of people came in along the way. The Gary Antonoffs that came in, Earhart.
Steve Earhart.
Steve Earhart.
Yeah.
Great man. He got tied up. He got caught up in being part of the Antonucci. He wasn't part of that thing. He went to Colorado College. Now he's running the Liberty Bowl. Been an executive director out there. He has a different perspective of everything that happened. You might want to contact Steve Earhart, who's a terrific man. Did a ton of work for all of this.
Good idea.
The lawyers that got involved and towards the end. I was at a rugby tournament over the weekend in Glendale at that new tournament, and I was sitting with, talking to a couple of ladies that were there, worked in, one of them worked at the Denver Chamber, and she barely knew the guy that eventually was head of the chamber, Joe Blake, who did so much work. He came in with Gary Antonoff's bunch that did so much. They were the best network guys going. And she said, well, you know so-and-so. I said, no. And she brought up like 5, 6, 7 names. And I said, She said, well, they all worked on baseball and they were dead. And I said, I don't think so. There's a lot of people that say they voted for baseball or whatever it was, that try and take credit for whatever happened. We put a bronze plaque back up at the stadium that we had to fund ourselves. The Rockies, Rockies should have us all go out there and stand behind home plate one day and have one of us throw in the first pitch. Not one guy go out. I think Larry Rennell threw out the first pitch one time. But they should have the whole commission go out there and say,
or whomever's left.
Yeah, both of us. But this woman named up, and she was playing like I wasn't involved in baseball. I said, I don't know any of those names. Those people had nothing to do with baseball.
Yes, Neil and I hear that all the time.
Yeah. Well, I know it started with John DeCue. Then it went to you two, wrote the legislation, got it passed, and then it went there and it steamrolled. I was proud to be a part of it, and I would love to be a part of anything that was like that again. Immediately after the baseball commission, John Beek contacted me, and they wanted to, because they were having stadium envy, and they wanted me to help with them to get Mile High Stadium replaced with a new stadium, which is now What's the Matter U Stadium over here, without a name.
Yeah.
And I did a presentation on a retractable dome. And everybody there, was like 20 people there in Beek's office, and I spent a couple of weeks researching retractable domes because I thought, hey, we'd get a Republican National Convention, not them Democrats. But a ton of events, which there would have been at least one Super Bowl here by now. With the retractable dome stadium, there'd have been huge events coming in, and what's going on with it. Everybody loved it, and at the end of the things that everybody said, oh, good, and Pat Bowlen said, nah, $100 million extra. Yeah, no, I'm not for that. And everybody said, yeah, that's too much. Everybody was for it until Pat turned and said, yeah.
Well, Neil and I have often said that this issue was much like a relay race, and, it was the Housens who kept the dream alive.
Bob Housen, big help on this. He wasn't part of the commission, but he was a guy that was an insider in baseball that advised us, and he became a mentor of mine through this whole process.
And, to John DeCue, to Federico Pena, and that if
Federico, we did a lot of breakfast meetings, and Federico was involved in. Now, I have to say, Roy Romer was afraid of it politically. Pat Schroeder. Then there's, well, there was you guys, I'm sure, were at the rally downtown when it passed. Well, there was about half of the baseball commission that was at my restaurant because Pat Schroeder was against it, 100% against it. Roy Romer would never, he was for it, he would never speak out for it. He never did anything to raise money. Tim Worth, great baseball guy, was always for it through that whole process. The only person whose political career suffered.
well,
Never should have. They should have been giving you medals.
those things all happen for the right reasons.
Yeah.
We don't know why.
I'm okay.
But I think, what we have always felt is that if anybody would have dropped the baton during their term, which includes the baseball commission, we wouldn't have Major League Baseball here today.
Oh, no, there wouldn't be Major League Baseball here without John DeCue initially, the two of you who wrote it, and the 2/3 of the baseball commission who really did do a lot of work for it. And everybody did their own thing in their own way, but there were some hardworking people on it, and there were some added on at the right time as it was going on. And hey, here we are. You're welcome.
So that was my next thought, and that is thank you, Gil, for all of the work that you've done on it. And I think as Neil and I look at the massive throngs of people that are around Coors Field at any given time when there is a game, especially opening day, that most of those folks are new to Colorado, and they don't know anything other than there's always been a baseball stadium there.
You guys went to the winter meetings back in, was it 89?
Yeah.
And the baseball commission, we had a table in Saudi Arabia, in that dinner thing they had that night.
The hinterlands.
Tommy Hawkins, who was we were at the not Grand Ole Opry, but it was what was the hotel that was all held at? It was it was in Nashville.
Nashville, yeah.
But it was one of the Opryland
Hotel.
project. Tommy Hawkins, who was a basketball player, played at Notre Dame. Then he played for the LA Lakers. Then when he got out, he got into broadcasting. When I was a senior in high school, he broadcast the game from my high. There was one basketball game a week for high school back in 1966 and 65. And, okay, sorry. I got the player of the game, and so he interviewed me afterwards. So that's the only way I met Tommy Hawkins. And it was nice, and we got along, and we talked a little bit afterwards. I went to the Marine Corps right after that, and I ran into Tom. I was stationed over in Hawaii. I was in the Marine Corps. I was military police. And in Kalakaua Avenue, outside the International Village that was there, I ran into Tommy Hawkins. Tommy, how you doing? He said, I said, well, Gil Whiteley, you wouldn't remember me. You telegraphed the thing, and we interviewed. Oh, yeah, I remember you. And we kind of exchanged numbers. Well, he became the broadcast guy, the vice president in charge of broadcasting or media for the Dodgers later on. And he was a connection of mine. I had him on my show over the years, and we were at our table was like table 18, the baseball commission, which we thought, hey, that's right up front. Well, it wasn't.
Not exactly.
He was at table like 366. Would you like to join us? And I'm like, sure, I'll join you with it. Well, I sat at a table with Tommy LaRussa, with Peter O'Malley, with the people at the table, and I got to talk to Peter O'Malley for an hour and a half during the dinner and that whole ceremony. It's about, hey, Colorado, and he says, Colorado seems great to me, and that was like you don't remember it, but Sam Saplazio and those guys. How'd you get in that table? And their table number was like 380 at 360 or something, and right in front of the podium. And I was like, it was serendipitous.
I was gonna say, there are a
I
lot
said,
of
yeah, I'll go
kismet
sit with you,
moments.
Tommy. I'll sit in the back with you, whatever it might be. So that was very bizarre, but I got to meet Peter Mount. What a gentleman. He owned the Dodgers. He ran the National League at that time.
Well,
Wow.
it was an amazing process to go through, and it turned out right at the end of the day.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
And, you know, History Colorado is going to do some kind of an exhibit at History Colorado before opening day next year. And this
Can I
is
get you guys a ticket with me and hair?
We're gonna see if we can't have this put together by that particular time and have a presentation, so,
Okay.
yeah.